A stranger in the mirror. The school hallway was buzzing with the usual morning chaos. Students chatting, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. Madison Winters adjusted her backpack strap and exhaled, already dreading the day ahead. Senior year was supposed to be exciting, a time of endless possibilities. Instead, for Madison, it felt like a waiting game. She was stuck in the same town she'd lived in her whole life, surrounded by the same faces she had known since kindergarten. But today, something was off. The moment she stepped into her homeroom, a hush spread through the students, whispers rippling across the classroom. Madison frowned, shifting uncomfortably under the weight of dozens of curious, borderline shocked stares. Then she saw her. Sitting 2 seats away, the new girl was flipping through her notebook, completely oblivious to the way the entire room had frozen. The sight of her sent a jolt through Madison's entire body. Her heart pounded, her breath hitched. The girl looked exactly like her. Same wavy chestnut hair, same green eyes with the small specks of hazel that caught the light, same sharp cheekbones and small, barely noticeable scar above the right eyebrow. Something Madison had earned at the age of 5 when she tripped over a toy and hit the corner of a coffee table. Madison felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. The new girl, her doppelganger, finally glanced up, her gaze locking onto Madison's. Her eyes widened in the same exact way Madison's did. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke, the classroom fading into white noise around them. Then the teacher entered, breaking the spell. "All right, settle down," Mr. Thompson said, setting his coffee mug on his desk. "We have a new student today." The girl, Madison's twin, stood slowly like she was in a daze. "Class, this is Olivia Carter. She just moved here. I expect you all to be welcoming." Olivia. Even her name felt wrong, like a puzzle piece forced into a place it didn't belong. Madison sat down stiffly, her pulse drumming in her ears. She barely heard the lesson. Every so often, she would sneak glances at Olivia. And every single time, Olivia was doing the same. By lunchtime, the entire school was talking about it. "Did you see Madison's clone? Maybe she's a long-lost twin." This is some Parent Trap-level weirdness. It didn't help that, when Madison finally made her way to the cafeteria, Olivia was sitting alone at a table, pushing a salad around with her fork. Something in Madison snapped. She couldn't let this go. Gathering her courage, she walked over. "Hey." Olivia glanced up, her expression guarded but equally confused. "Hey." Madison sat down, her fingers drumming against the table. "Okay, let's cut the crap. Who are you?" Olivia smirked, though it lacked any real amusement. "I was going to ask you the same thing." For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Madison sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't normal," she muttered. "You think?" Olivia said dryly, then sighed, setting her fork down. "Look, I don't know what's going on. My parents told me I was an only child. This," she gestured between them, "is messing with my entire reality right now." Madison studied her, searching for any sign of a trick, a lie, something that would explain this. But Olivia seemed just as shaken. Then Madison's best friend, Kara, slid into the seat next to her, dropping her tray onto the table with a dramatic thud. "Okay, this is officially the weirdest thing I've ever seen," Kara said, looking between them. "Like, I'm actually freaking out a little bit." "You and me both," Madison muttered. Olivia shook her head. "There's got to be an explanation." "Yeah," Kara said. "And I think we should get one." Madison didn't need to ask what she meant. DNA test. It was the only logical next step. 3 days later, Madison sat on her bed, staring at the small, sterile-looking DNA kit in her hands. Olivia was sitting across from her, mirroring her movements. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Olivia murmured. "Me neither," Madison admitted. But deep down, she knew she wouldn't be able to sleep until she had answers. Both of them swabbed their cheeks, sealed the tests, and packed them in the small pre-labeled boxes. "This is insane," Olivia said, shaking her head. "Yeah," Madison agreed. And yet something in her gut told her that they weren't even close to uncovering the real mystery yet. The test that changed everything. Madison and Olivia sat in silence for a moment, staring at the sealed DNA test kits on Madison's bed like they might suddenly explode. The weight of what they were doing, of what this could mean, was settling in, thick and suffocating. "So, now we just mail them," Olivia said, breaking the silence. Madison nodded but didn't move. She had spent the past 17 years thinking she was just a normal high school girl. No siblings, no deep, dark family secrets. Just her mom, and her stepdad. But now, in the span of a few days, everything had shifted, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth. "I can drop them off at the post office tomorrow," Olivia offered. Madison finally peeled her eyes away from the boxes and looked at Olivia. Her twin? Her clone? Her what? Anne felt a weird sense of connection. "Yeah," Madison said. "Tomorrow." That night, Madison lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shut off her brain. She could hear the faint hum of the TV from the living room, where her mom was probably half asleep on the couch. The sound was oddly comforting, but it didn't do much to settle the unease in her chest. She had never really questioned her life before. Sure, her mom didn't talk much about the past, and Madison had never met her biological dad. But that wasn't weird. Lots of people grew up with just one parent. Right. Then why did it feel like there was a gaping hole in her life that she had never noticed before? She sighed, rolling onto her side and grabbing her phone. "Olivia, can't sleep." "You?" "Madison." "Nope." "Olivia, we're definitely related." Madison smirked, but the amusement was short-lived. "Madison, what if this changes everything?" "Olivia, I think it already has." Madison exhaled, staring at the screen for a moment before typing. "Madison, guess we'll find out soon." She sent the message, put her phone on silent, and closed her eyes, trying to ignore the feeling that she had just set something into motion that she couldn't take back. 2 weeks later, the email arrived at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Madison had just gotten home from school, tossing her backpack onto the couch when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Your DNA results are ready." Her hands trembled as she tapped the notification. Her heart pounded in her chest as she scrolled down, scanning the data. Her vision blurred as she saw the word that confirmed everything. Full sibling match, 100%. Her breath hitched. This wasn't some coincidence. This wasn't a distant cousin or some weird doppelganger situation. They were sisters, born from the same parents, raised by different families. Why? Her fingers moved on autopilot as she pulled up Olivia's contact. "Madison, check your email." Seconds later, her phone rang. She answered, barely able to speak. "Did you see it?" Olivia's voice was breathless, shaken. "Yeah," Madison whispered. "We're sisters." Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. "Why didn't our parents tell us?" Olivia finally asked. Madison swallowed hard, the truth settling in like a stone in her gut. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we're going to find out." And she meant it. Because if there was one thing she knew for sure, it was this. Somewhere, buried deep in the past, was a secret that was never meant to be uncovered. But now there was no stopping the truth. The lies we were told. The results had been clear. 100% full sibling match. Madison and Olivia weren't just lookalikes. They weren't distant cousins. They were sisters. Blood. Identical DNA. And yet, they had never met before 2 weeks ago. Madison sat on the edge of her bed, the glow of her phone screen illuminating her face in the dimly lit room. Olivia was on the other end of the call, silent for what felt like forever. "What do we do now?" Olivia finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Madison exhaled, rubbing a hand over her face. We ask questions. To who? Olivia scoffed. My parents? Your parents. You really think they're just going to tell us the truth? Madison didn't have an answer for that. Her mom was never the most open person when it came to the past. She didn't talk about Madison's biological father, and whenever Madison had asked, she'd always gotten vague answers. It didn't work out. He wasn't ready for a family. It's complicated. What if those weren't just excuses? What if she had been hiding something all along? I don't know, Madison admitted, but we have to try. The first confrontation. Madison didn't waste time. After hanging up with Olivia, she marched straight into the kitchen, where her mom was washing dishes, humming softly to the radio. Mom, Madison said, her voice firm. Her mom turned, drying her hands on a dish towel. What's up, honey? Madison hesitated for a fraction of a second. She had always trusted her mom, always believed that she would tell her the truth. But now she wasn't so sure. Who's my real father? Her mom's smile faltered, just slightly. Madison, we've talked about this. No, Madison interrupted. We haven't talked about this. You've given me half answers my whole life, and I let it go. But now I need the truth. Her mom set the towel down slowly, taking a deep breath. Where is this coming from? Madison reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, scrolling to the DNA results. She turned the screen around, showing her mom the glaring 100% full sibling match notification. Her mom's face drained of color. For the first time in Madison's life, she saw something in her mother's eyes she had never seen before. Fear. Mom. Madison's voice wavered. Her mom swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the counter. Where did you? Who is she? Madison demanded, her chest tightening. Why didn't I know I had a sister? Why were we raised apart? Her mother exhaled shakily, looking away. It's complicated. Madison's stomach twisted. Try me. Her mom squeezed her eyes shut, like she was bracing herself for a storm. When she opened them, they were glossy, unreadable. You were never supposed to find out. Madison felt like the floor had just been ripped out from under her. Find out what? Her mother hesitated, too long. Mom. Madison's voice cracked. Tell me the truth. Her mother flinched, then took a shaky breath. Madison, I love you. I love you more than anything in the world, and I did what I had to do to keep you safe. Safe. Madison's head spun. Safe from what? Her mother shook her head, looking away. I can't. You can't or you won't. Madison challenged. Her mother didn't answer. Madison felt something break inside her. Fine, she whispered, stepping back. If you won't tell me, I'll find out myself. And with that, she turned and walked out the door. The other side of the truth. Meanwhile, Olivia was facing a similar battle. She sat at the dinner table, her DNA results printed out and sitting between her and her parents like a bomb waiting to go off. Her father, Michael Carter, adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. Her mother, Deborah Carter, stirred her tea, avoiding eye contact. So, Olivia said, forcing her voice to stay steady, are we going to talk about this, or are you guys just going to sit there pretending nothing happened? Her father exhaled through his nose. Olivia, I understand you're upset, but this isn't. Don't tell me this isn't a big deal. Olivia snapped. You told me my whole life that I was an only child, that I didn't have any siblings. That was a lie. Her mother finally looked at her, her eyes filled with something close to regret. We did what was best for you. Olivia's stomach turned. What does that even mean? Silence. Her father cleared his throat. You and Madison were born together, but things were complicated. Complicated how? He hesitated. You were adopted, he finally admitted. Olivia's heart stopped. Her breath hitched, and suddenly it felt like the entire world had shifted. Adopted, she echoed. Her mother reached for her hand, but Olivia pulled away. Why didn't you ever tell me? Her mother sighed. We wanted to, but we thought it would be easier this way, that you'd grow up without questions. Olivia's entire body felt numb. You were taken in through a private arrangement, her father added. Your birth parents. They were young. They weren't ready. Olivia's hands curled into fists. So they just gave me away. Her mother shook her head. No, it wasn't like that. It was complicated. There was that word again. Olivia clenched her jaw, her mind spinning. She had spent 17 years believing in a reality that had never existed, and now she had no idea who she was. I need to go, she said suddenly, pushing back her chair. Olivia, wait, her father started. But she was already out the door. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Madison, we need to talk. Olivia, yeah, now. The next step. An hour later, Madison and Olivia sat in Olivia's car, parked outside an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Madison broke the silence. My mom told me I was never supposed to find out. Olivia let out a dry laugh. Mine told me I was adopted. My whole life was a lie. Madison stared at the dashboard. This isn't just some family drama. This is big. They're hiding something. Olivia's grip on the steering wheel tightened. So what do we do? Madison met her eyes, determination burning behind her fear. We find the truth. Because one thing was certain now. Their parents had spent 17 years keeping secrets, and Madison and Olivia were about to uncover them all. Varied truths and hidden names. Madison sat in Olivia's car, her mind racing faster than the raindrops trailing down the windshield. The storm outside wasn't nearly as turbulent as the storm inside her head. She had been raised an only child. A simple life, a quiet life. But now, everything was unraveling at the seams. Their parents, both hers and Olivia's, had spent 17 years crafting a lie. And now, they had just set it on fire. She clenched her fists. No more half-truths. No more secrets. It was time to find out why they had been kept apart. Olivia gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. We need to dig deeper. Madison nodded. Yeah, but how? They had asked their parents, and all they had gotten were cryptic answers and vague excuses. It was clear they wouldn't get the full truth that way. Olivia exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. We need something concrete. A paper trail. A birth record. Adoption papers. Something. Madison frowned, thinking. Hospital records. Olivia turned to her. What? Madison swallowed, her heartbeat quickening. We were born together, right? That means there's got to be a birth record. The hospital, the date. She stopped, realization hitting her like a freight train. Our last names. Olivia's eyebrows furrowed. What about them? Madison hesitated. You were adopted. But my mom never changed her last name after she had me. I always thought it was because she didn't marry my dad. But what if? She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. What are you doing? Olivia leaned over, peeking at the screen. Looking up birth announcements, Madison muttered. It was a long shot. Most families didn't post birth announcements in the newspaper anymore, but 17 years ago. Maybe. She scrolled through archived records, her eyes scanning the screen. And then, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a small, faded article from April 6, 2006. Born at Mercy General Hospital. Twin daughters to proud parents, Matthew and Rebecca Calloway. Madison's hands went numb. That name, Calloway, wasn't hers. It wasn't Olivia's either. What the hell? Olivia breathed. Madison's heart pounded. I don't know that name. Do you? Olivia shook her head, her expression mirroring Madison's shock. So, neither of us were raised with our real last name. Silence hung heavy in the air. Madison swallowed hard. Who the hell are Matthew and Rebecca Calloway? Breaking into the past. They drove straight to Mercy General Hospital. It was late, past visiting hours. But Madison didn't care. She stormed through the automatic doors, Olivia right beside her. The front desk receptionist barely looked up. "Hi, Madison took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "We're looking for birth records from 2006. The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" Madison hesitated. If she told the truth, they'd never let her see the records. So she lied. "My mom needs a copy for legal reasons," she said quickly. "She asked us to pick it up." The receptionist gave her a skeptical look, tapping her nails against the desk. "That would have to go through the records department, and they're closed for the night." Madison cursed under her breath. "Come back during business hours," the woman added, returning to her paperwork. Olivia pulled Madison aside. "We can't wait," she whispered. "I know," Madison muttered. Her mind was already working. They had two options: wait until tomorrow and hope for cooperation, or find another way. Olivia crossed her arms. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Madison gave her a tight smile. "Yep, we sneak in. Breaking and entering. Sort of." Getting into the records department wasn't easy. It was on the second floor, tucked away in a wing marked Employees Only. Madison and Olivia crept down the dimly lit hallway, their sneakers silent against the tile floor. "This is insane," Olivia whispered. "You have a better idea." "No." They reached the records office. Madison tried the door. Locked. Olivia sighed. Figures. Madison glanced around, then spotted a janitor's cart parked near the hallway. Hanging off the side. A keycard. Madison grabbed it before she could second-guess herself. "Okay, you're officially terrifying," Olivia whispered as Madison swiped the card. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. Rows and rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, labeled with dates and patient names. The room smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Olivia turned on her phone flashlight, scanning the labels. April 2006. They hurried over. Madison ran her fingers along the folders until she found it. She pulled it out, flipping through the pages. And then her blood ran cold. She grabbed Olivia's wrist, shoving the file in front of her. Olivia's eyes widened as she read it. Baby A. Madison Calloway. Baby B. Olivia Calloway. Madison gripped the paper, her fingers trembling. Calloway. Their real name. Their real identity. And then, at the bottom of the page, Mother, Rebecca Calloway. Father, Rory Dactd. "What the hell?" Olivia whispered. Madison shook her head. Why would his name be redacted? Her heart pounded. Someone had erased their father's name from the records. Someone had made sure no one would find out who he was. And now, they had to figure out why. Olivia clenched her jaw. "I think we just found our next mystery." Madison exhaled shakily. "Yeah, but something tells me we're not gonna like the answer. Because whoever had buried this secret had done so for a reason. And now Madison and Olivia were about to dig it up. A name worth hiding. The dim light of the hospital storage room cast eerie shadows along the walls, but Madison and Olivia had bigger things to worry about than the unsettling atmosphere. They held the birth record between them like it was a ticking bomb. Mother, Rebecca Calloway. Father, Rory Dactd. Madison's breath came fast and uneven. Someone went through the trouble of hiding his name. Yeah, Olivia's voice was strained, which means he's either dead, dangerous, or someone we weren't supposed to know existed. Madison swallowed, feeling the weight of the truth pressing down on her. "I say we find out which one." Olivia didn't hesitate. Agreed. Madison carefully tucked the birth record into her jacket and turned toward the door. But before she could take a step, a voice echoed from the hallway. "Hello." Both girls froze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Madison and Olivia locked eyes. They had seconds to act. Madison yanked open the closet door beside them, and they ducked inside just as the beam of a flashlight swept over the room. The shadow of a security guard stretched across the floor. Anyone in here? Madison held her breath, gripping Olivia's wrist tightly. The air in the cramped space was hot and stifling. Olivia squeezed her arm in a silent message. Stay still. The guard stepped into the room. Madison's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. A pause. Then, the door clicked shut. Footsteps retreated down the hall. The girls exhaled at the same time. Madison slowly pushed the door open a crack, peeking out. Coast clear. Let's get the hell out of here, Olivia whispered. Madison nodded, and they slipped back into the hallway, making their way toward the stairwell. A message from the past. The moment they got into Olivia's car, Madison pulled out the birth record again, scanning it for anything they might have missed. Olivia sighed, gripping the steering wheel. Okay, so we know our mom's name, Rebecca Calloway, and that someone erased our father's name from the record. Madison frowned. How do we even start looking for someone who doesn't want to be found? Maybe we start with Mom, Olivia said, her fingers drumming against the dashboard. If we can find Rebecca, we might be able to get answers. Madison hesitated. What if she doesn't want to be found? Olivia clenched her jaw. Then that just means we need to look harder. They drove in silence, the weight of their discovery settling over them like a thick fog. Then, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. Madison. Madison looked up, confused. What? Olivia turned the phone around. Blocked number. Stop looking. Leave it alone. A chill ran down Madison's spine. Her throat tightened. Is this a joke? Olivia's voice was barely above a whisper. I don't think so. Madison's blood ran cold. How do they know what we're doing? More importantly, Olivia murmured, staring at the screen. Who the hell is they? The woman in the photograph. Neither of them slept that night. By morning, Olivia had found something. A name. Rebecca Calloway wasn't just some random woman. She used to be a journalist. And not just any journalist. A whistleblower. She exposed corruption, Olivia said, scrolling through old news archives on her laptop. Illegal government projects, corporate crime, cover-ups. Madison's stomach twisted. And then she disappeared. Olivia nodded grimly. No records of her past 2006. No social media. No address. Nothing. She turned the screen toward Madison. An old photograph of Rebecca Calloway filled the screen. Madison inhaled sharply. The woman had their face, their eyes, their cheekbones. It was her. Our mother, Madison whispered. And she had been erased. The man they weren't supposed to find. Olivia didn't hesitate. We need to dig deeper. Madison swallowed. What if she's dead? Olivia's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then we find out who killed her. She typed in every variation of Rebecca Calloway's name she could think of. Then she tried something different. Instead of searching for Rebecca, she searched for who wanted her gone. And suddenly, a match. It was an old classified document from a leaked database, buried under dozens of dead links and corrupted files. It listed several names. One of them was Rebecca Calloway. But another name stood out. A name that wasn't redacted. A name that sent shivers down Madison's spine. Nathaniel Kane. She copied the name and pasted it into a search bar. And what came up nearly made her drop the laptop. Nathaniel Kane wasn't some random name. He was the CEO of Kane Industries, a billionaire, a former military scientist, and a convicted felon, charged with illegal human experimentation. Madison's throat closed. Oh my God. Olivia stared at the screen, her voice barely a whisper. I think we just found our father. Secrets that should have stayed buried. Kane Industries had once been one of the most powerful companies in the country. But then, in 2006, it all fell apart. Madison and Olivia scrolled through the articles, the headlines getting worse and worse. Kane Industries CEO arrested in federal investigation. Nathaniel Kane linked to underground experimentation facility. Government cover-up. Kane's research destroyed before trial. Kane sentenced to 30 years. Mysteriously released after 10. Released? Madison's voice shook. Why the hell would they let him out? Olivia clenched her jaw. Because people like him don't stay in prison. They make deals. Madison's heart pounded. You think he's still out there? Olivia's phone buzzed again. Another blocked message. Only this time, it wasn't a warning. It was an address. Olivia's hands trembled as she read it. Someone wants us to find him. Madison stared at the message, her breath catching. If Nathaniel Kane is our father, she whispered, then we were never just given away. No, Olivia agreed. We were stolen. The hunt begins. They had two options. Walk away, or go after the man who had been hiding in the shadows for 17 years. Olivia shut her laptop. We go. Madison took a deep breath. Somewhere, deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't just about a missing father. This was bigger, darker, and the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. She looked at Olivia, and together, they made their choice. Let's find him. The hunt had begun. The hunt for Nathaniel Kane. The car ride was silent. Olivia's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, eyes locked on the road ahead. The address from the blocked message burned in both their minds, a location on the outskirts of town, far from the suburbs, deep into the industrial district where the city's forgotten ruins lay. Madison shifted in her seat, the weight of their discovery pressing heavily against her chest. You really think this is real? Olivia exhaled sharply. I don't know, but I do know that someone wants us to find this place. And I want to know why. Madison stared out the window as the bright city lights faded into the shadows of abandoned warehouses and rusted shipping containers. This wasn't a place people visited. This was a place people disappeared. Olivia slowed the car as they approached the address. It was an old storage facility, its once white exterior now cracked and weathered. The chain-link fence surrounding it was rusted, the sign hanging crookedly, barely legible. No TRESPASSing. Madison swallowed. This feels bad. Olivia put the car in park. So did finding out we were lied to for 17 years. Fair point. Madison reached for the handle, but before she could open the door, Olivia grabbed her wrist. Wait, Olivia said. What if this is a trap? Madison's heart pounded. Only one way to find out. They stepped out of the car. The wind howled through the empty lot, rattling loose metal and stirring the scent of rust and decay. Madison's stomach tightened. They shouldn't be here. But they had no choice. Inside the facility, the front door was locked. Figures. Olivia walked along the side of the building, checking for another way in. Madison followed, her pulse loud in her ears. A window, partially open. Olivia turned to her. Boost me up. Madison laced her fingers together, bracing as Olivia stepped up and hoisted herself through. A moment later, a soft thud sounded from inside. Your turn, Olivia whispered. Madison pulled herself through, landing on the cold concrete floor. The air inside was thick with dust and age, the faint scent of chemicals lingering. She turned on her phone flashlight, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Rows of filing cabinets lined one side of the room. A rusted medical chair stood in the center. Madison's stomach twisted. What the hell was this place? Olivia didn't answer. She was already moving toward the cabinets, pulling open drawers, flipping through old files. Madison hesitated, then walked toward a small desk at the back of the room. The wood was warped, the surface covered in yellowed papers. She reached for the top file, fingers trembling. It was labeled Sue BGCT017, Callaway, INFANTA and INFANTB. Her breath caught in her throat. She flipped the page. There, in grainy black and white, were two infants, hooked up to wires. Their names: Baby A, Madison Callaway; Baby B, Olivia Callaway. The words blurred before her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the edges of the paper. This wasn't just an adoption. This was an experiment. A sharp gasp from Olivia made her whirl around. Olivia held another file in her hands, her face pale. Madison. She turned the file so Madison could see. It was a report, a death certificate, for Rebecca Callaway. Madison's vision darkened. No. She died a month after we were born, Olivia whispered, voice breaking. She didn't leave us. She was murdered. Madison forced herself to look at the details. Cause of death: auto accident. But next to it, status: undetermined. She gritted her teeth. This was a cover-up. The pieces clicked together in her mind. Rebecca Callaway had been a whistleblower, a journalist. She must have found out what was happening, what Nathaniel Kane was doing. And they silenced her. Olivia's hands trembled as she turned the page. Madison, look. Another document. A release order. For Nathaniel Kane. It was dated 7 years ago. He's free, Madison whispered. Her blood ran ice cold. The man who had stolen them. The man who had erased their mother. The man who had built this facility. He was out there, watching, waiting. A sudden noise made both girls freeze. A click. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. Step away from the files, a deep voice commanded. Madison turned slowly, her heart stopping. A man stood in the doorway, dressed in a black suit, his gun aimed directly at them. His face was unfamiliar. But the Kane Industries emblem on his jacket was not. Olivia inhaled sharply. They weren't just looking for Nathaniel Kane anymore. They were being hunted, and they had just walked into the lion's den. Hunted by ghosts. The man's grip on the gun was steady, cold, precise. Step away from the files, he repeated, voice even, unreadable. Madison's breath was shallow, her pulse hammering against her ribs. Olivia's fingers twitched near the desk, eyes scanning the room for an escape route. The air in the storage facility had shifted, like a trap had just been sprung, and they were standing right in the center of it. Madison raised her hand slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. We don't want trouble. The man's expression didn't change. Then you shouldn't have come here. Madison exchanged a glance with Olivia. They had two choices: comply and risk never leaving this place, or run. She chose run. With a split-second movement, Madison grabbed the stack of files and threw them into the air. The man flinched, momentarily distracted by the flurry of paper. That was all they needed. Go, Olivia shouted, shoving over a metal cart to block his path. They sprinted toward the nearest exit, adrenaline fueling their every step. The man fired. Bang! A bullet whizzed past Madison's shoulder, embedding into the concrete wall. She didn't stop. Olivia was already yanking open a side door, light flooding in from the alleyway beyond. They burst outside, the sharp bite of cold air shocking them as they ran full speed toward Olivia's car. Tires screeched in the distance. Madison turned her head just in time to see black SUVs rounding the corner, speeding straight toward them. Oh, hell no, Olivia muttered, fumbling for her keys. Movie. Madison shoved her forward as another gunshot rang out, shattering the rear windshield of the car. Glass rained down around them, sparkling in the moonlight. Olivia dove into the driver's seat, starting the ignition with shaking hands. Madison barely got the passenger door closed before Olivia floored it. The tires screeched, smoke rising from the pavement as they peeled out of the alleyway. The SUVs were right behind them. Headlights flared in the mirrors, dark figures moving inside. Madison's hands gripped the dashboard. chest heaving. Who the hell are these people? Olivia's knuckles were white around the steering wheel. I don't know, but I'm not slowing down to ask. She swerved onto the main road, narrowly avoiding a parked truck. The SUVs followed. Faster. Closer. A black-clad man leaned out of the window, raising a rifle. Madison's stomach lurched. Duck. Bang. The windshield cracked as a bullet punched through the glass. Olivia cursed, swerving violently. We can't outrun them. Madison's mind raced. Think, think, think. Then, a train horn blared in the distance. Madison's eyes snapped toward the crossing up ahead. The red warning lights flashed as the gate started lowering. Floor it, Madison gasped. Olivia didn't hesitate. She slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The car launched forward, the engine roaring in protest. The SUVs were gaining on them. The train's headlights gleamed through the night, a wall of metal barreling toward the crossing at full speed. The gate was almost fully down. Madison's breath caught in her throat. Oliva. The car shot through the gap, scraping the edge of the lowered gate. Madison felt the sheer force of the train as they just barely made it across. The SUVs weren't so lucky. A deafening metallic screech erupted as the lead vehicle slammed its brakes, tires screaming against the pavement. Too late. The train obliterated it. The sheer impact sent flinging debris flying in all directions. Madison and Olivia barely had time to breathe before Olivia swerved onto a side street, disappearing into the night. Silence filled the car, save for their ragged breathing. For the first time in her life, Madison truly understood fear. This wasn't just a family mystery anymore. This was a hunt, and they were the prey. A name worth dying for. An hour later, they parked outside a rundown gas station miles outside of town. Madison's hands still shook as she pulled out the file she had managed to grab in the chaos. Her voice was hoarse. We need to know what's in this. Olivia nodded, turning on the overhead light. Madison flipped open the folder and froze. There, staring back at her, was a photo of Nathaniel Kane. And next to it, a classified document with a bold red stamp across the top. Project Phoenix. Infahane TTESD sub BGCTs. Confid and Chiel. Her hands tightened around the paper. Olivia inhaled sharply. Madison. What is this? Madison scanned the document, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Subject A and Subject B were created under controlled conditions to study the effects of enhanced genetics. Birth was induced under artificial environments, followed by immediate separation to prevent maternal interference. Her vision blurred as she reached the bottom of the page. Status. Experiment terminated. Both subjects relocated under different identities. Her lungs stopped working. Olivia's voice barely registered. They didn't just separate us, Madison. Madison's hands trembled violently as she whispered the words aloud. They made us. The horrors of Kane Industries. The realization struck like a hammer. Nathaniel Kane wasn't just their father. He had engineered them. They weren't just abandoned babies. They were experiments. Madison's stomach churned. Why? What were they trying to do? Olivia flipped through the rest of the files. Something about genetic enhancements, accelerated intelligence, physical adaptability. They were. Her voice caught. She held up a separate page, a list of names, and next to each name, status, deceased. Madison's blood ran ice cold. Holy shit, Olivia whispered. We weren't the only ones, but they were the only ones left. Madison stared at the document, her chest tightening. This wasn't just about finding the truth anymore. This was about survival. Because whoever had sent those men after them wasn't done yet. And Nathaniel Kane, he was still out there, watching, waiting, and he knew they were coming for him. The final warning. Madison's phone buzzed. A new message. From a blocked number. She hesitated before opening it. Her hand shook as she read the words. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Stop now, or you won't live to regret it." Her blood turned to ice. Olivia clenched her jaw. "What do we do?" Madison looked up, determination burning in her eyes. "We go after him." Because this wasn't over. Not even close. They had spent their whole lives living in someone else's lie. Now, they were going to burn it down. And Nathaniel Kane, he was about to pay for what he did, no matter what it cost. The monster in the shadows. The cold wind bit at Madison's face as she stood outside the abandoned gas station, gripping the classified document tighter in her hands. The reality of what they had uncovered still hadn't fully sunk in. They weren't just separated sisters. They weren't just stolen. They were engineered, created in a lab under the control of a man whose name sent shivers down her spine. Nathaniel Kane. Madison swallowed the lump in her throat and turned to Olivia, who was leaning against the hood of the car, scrolling through the files on her phone. Her expression was unreadable, but Madison knew she was just as shaken. "Say it out loud," Olivia said without looking up. Madison hesitated. Olivia finally met her eyes. "Say it, Madison." Madison exhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the words. "We were test subjects." The words tasted foreign in her mouth. Olivia nodded grimly, as if confirming what she already knew. Project Phoenix. That's what they called it. She held up her phone, showing another document. "Look at this." Madison scanned the screen. It was an internal memo from Kane Industries. Subjects A and B exhibit the desired genetic mutations. If successful, this project could lead to the next phase of human evolution. Her stomach twisted. "We weren't just stolen," Olivia murmured. "We were designed." Madison clenched her jaw. "Then why did they stop?" Olivia scrolled down, her expression darkening. "They didn't. They just failed. Every other subject in the program was terminated. We were the only ones who survived." Madison's pulse pounded in her ears. "We were never supposed to exist," Olivia whispered. Silence. Then, Madison's phone buzzed. Another blocked message. She hesitated before opening it. "Leave it alone. This is your final warning." A second later, Olivia's phone lit up with the same text. They both stood frozen. Someone was watching them. Someone who knew what they had uncovered, and someone who wanted them dead. Madison clenched her fists. "No more warnings." Olivia nodded. "We find him." There was no other option. Nathaniel Kane had built this nightmare. And now, they were going to end it. The road to the devil. Tracking the ghost wasn't easy. Kane had been erased from public records after his release 7 years ago. No addresses, no bank accounts, no business ties. It was like he had vanished. But people like Nathaniel Kane didn't just disappear. They hid in the cracks of the world, surrounded by power and secrecy. And Madison and Olivia were going to smoke him out. They sat in a dingy motel room, laptops glowing against the darkness. Olivia scrolled through encrypted forums, government leaks, black market networks, anywhere a man like Kane might leave a trace. Then she found it. A name. A shell company operating under different aliases. It had been cycling money through private accounts in Argentina, Switzerland, and Russia. And one of those accounts was still active, under the name NC Holdings. Madison's heart pounded. Nathaniel Kane. Olivia's hands flew over the keyboard, tracing the transaction history. "Wait, there's a withdrawal from 2 weeks ago." She clicked on the entry. A location appeared. Madison's breath caught. New York City. Olivia looked up. Madison met her gaze, the unspoken understanding passing between them. He was close. They weren't chasing a dead man. They were chasing a monster who was still alive. And he knew they were coming. The man in the glass tower. They reached New York 2 days later. It was nearly midnight when they arrived outside the towering glass building, the headquarters of Synthex Biotech, one of the companies listed under NC Holdings. It was sleek, modern, and crawling with security. "He's in there," Madison murmured. Olivia nodded, eyeing the cameras mounted on the walls. "And there's no way they're letting us walk in through the front door." Madison took a deep breath. "So we go through the back." They circled the building, sticking to the shadows. Madison spotted a delivery truck unloading crates at a service entrance. Perfect. The moment the workers turned their backs, the sisters slipped through the doors, keeping their heads down. They moved through the narrow hallways, passing security stations and keycard doors. Madison's pulse was racing. Where do we even start? Olivia pulled out her phone, checking the building's directory. Executive offices, top floor. Of course. Nathaniel Kane was at the top of his tower, looking down on the world like a king. But tonight, his past had come knocking. They took the stairs, avoiding the security patrols. By the time they reached the 25th floor, their legs were burning, but neither of them slowed. They had come too far. They wouldn't stop now. They crept through the hallways, scanning the nameplates on each door. Then, Dr. Nathaniel Kane, Executive Director. Madison's breath hitched. This was it. She reached for the handle. But the door opened first, and there he was. Nathaniel Kane, their father, standing before them, looking completely unfazed, like he had been expecting them. Madison's blood ran cold. "You've been busy," Kane said smoothly, stepping into the dim hallway. His voice was calm, too calm, like he was amused. Madison took a step back, her muscles tensed. Olivia's jaw clenched. "You know who we are." Kane tilted his head, a hint of a smirk on his lips. "Of course I do," he said. "You're my greatest creations." Madison's stomach lurched. Kane's eyes gleamed. "And now that you found me, let's talk about why I made you." Madison's fists clenched. She wanted answers. But more than that. She wanted to burn this man's world to the ground. This was it. The confrontation they had been waiting for. And the final truth was about to be revealed. The truth in the blood. Madison's breath came fast and shallow as she stared at the man standing in front of her. The man who had haunted every file, every document, every secret they had uncovered. Nathaniel Kane, her father, the monster who had engineered them. Olivia stood rigid beside her, fists clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Kane watched them with a calm amusement, as if this was nothing more than a casual conversation. "I must say," he murmured, adjusting his suit cuffs, "I expected you much sooner." Madison's body tensed. He had expected them. Olivia took a slow step forward. "You knew we'd find you." Kane smirked. "Of course, it was inevitable. I designed you to be exceptional. You were bound to start asking questions eventually." Madison's stomach churned. "Designed?" She spat. "Like we're some kind of." Kane raised a brow. "Science project." Silence. Because that was exactly what they were. Kane exhaled, as if he were discussing something as mundane as the weather. "Your mother, Rebecca, she was a complication. She never should have known what I was doing. But she was a reporter, relentless, and she kept digging. When she uncovered the truth, I gave her a choice. Stay quiet or disappear." Madison felt something inside her break. "You murdered her." Kane didn't flinch. "She made a mistake. She thought she could stop me. That's the thing about truth, Madison. It doesn't save anyone. It only destroys them." Madison's hands shook. She had spent her entire life believing that her mother had simply been absent, that she had left. But she had been hunted down, executed, because she had tried to save her daughters. Rage burned through Madison like wildfire. "She died trying to protect us," Olivia whispered. Kane smiled, and that was somehow worse than if he had denied it. "And yet here you are, alive, because of me." Madison's blood boiled. "We're alive despite you." Kane chuckled, shaking his head. "You still don't understand, do you? What I created wasn't just some experiment. It was the future." He stepped forward. You think you were just born with perfect genetics, intelligence, strength. You think it was luck that you survived when every other test subject failed. Madison's throat tightened. Kane's gaze darkened. You survived because you were the only successes. Madison's pulse pounded. Olivia's voice was hoarse. Why did you separate us? Kane's eyes gleamed. Control. 2 test subjects, raised apart. One with knowledge of her origins, the other without. A study in nature versus nurture. Madison's breath hitched. He had done this on purpose. He had split them up on purpose. Olivia's fists shook. And what? You were just waiting for us to come running back to you. Kane smiled. You were never supposed to survive long enough to. But I suppose I should be proud. My creations have exceeded expectations. Madison saw red. She lunged forward. But Kane moved first. A syringe glinted in his hand, and before Madison could react, he jabbed it into Olivia's neck. Olivia gasped, her body locking up. No. Madison slammed into him, sending them both crashing against the desk. Olivia's legs buckled, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. What did you do to her? Madison screamed. Kane smirked. Just a failsafe. Can't have my creations turning on me now, can I? Madison's world shattered. She grabbed the closest thing, a heavy metal lamp, and swung it. Crack. Kane stumbled, blood dripping from his forehead, but he was still smiling. You think you can kill me, Madison? He laughed, blood staining his teeth. You owe me your life. Madison's hand shook. He was right. She wanted him dead. She wanted to erase every trace of him, to make sure he could never hurt anyone else again. But she wasn't like him. She wasn't a monster. Instead, she turned to Olivia, whose body was still struggling against the drug in her veins. She needed to get her out. She needed to run. Kane watched her, amusement flickering in his eyes. Go ahead. Run. But this isn't over. Madison's jaw tightened. No, she whispered. It's not. Then she grabbed Olivia and bolted. The fire that burned it down. The elevator was too risky, so Madison half-carried Olivia down the stairwell. Her sister was fading fast. It's in my blood. Olivia slurred. The drug. It's in my blood. Madison's stomach lurched. They had to get it out of her. Sirens wailed in the distance. They burst into the parking lot just as headlights blinded them. Madison's heart stopped. The black SUVs. They were trapped. She braced herself. Then, boom. An explosion tore through the top floor of the building. Flames erupted into the night sky. Madison's breath hitched. Someone had set the fire. But whoa. A second later, a black sedan skidded to a stop in front of them. The window rolled down. A woman sat behind the wheel, her face hidden in the shadows. Get in, she ordered. Madison hesitated. Whoa. Now. Madison didn't think. She hauled Olivia into the back seat and jumped in after her. The car peeled out, tires screeching. As they sped away, Madison turned to the driver. The woman's face was weathered, her sharp blue eyes flickering in the dim light. You don't know me, she said, but I knew your mother. Madison's breath caught. Who are you? She whispered. The woman's jaw tightened. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm here to finish what Rebecca started. Madison's mind spun. Before she could speak, Evelyn tossed a folder onto her lap. Inside, a list of names. Project Phoenix was bigger than we thought. Madison's blood ran cold. Kane wasn't just creating them. There were others. And some of them were still out there. This wasn't over. Not even close. Madison clenched her fists. Kane had tried to erase them. But now, they were coming for him. For the truth. For everyone he had stolen. And this time, they weren't running. They were hunting.